I would get bored of listening to the pieces.
Depends on how they're played. No, it's okay. I enjoy working with people. That's what I wanted.
Very nice to some.
I knew that he was
Back then.
quite a portrait. He wrote the Spanish diploma, but it's on the see him in Key West.
Is this good?
Good job. Thank you so much. You're welcome. All the best.
It's a really lovely moments. Play well together. It sounds sweet. So
Thank you.
we have a lot to work with.
Okay, okay.
So you have a hard copy for me that I can.
Yeah, I have 2 copies of this book.
Hoping you will sign
Okay, so the beginning worked well. Now there was that was all really good. I do want to speak about that. Now in the B section, there was a disentrainment. You were aware of that?
That's right, yeah.
I'm not sure. So
When
that
you say the B section, you like 22?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. So we'll need to hear that again. So I want to hear how, when you play it
Right.
correctly, what's going on there, because that was clearly off by a bit. but we'll get there. I think we'll start right in order. So you heard the first, when I did the masterclass with the first
Yes,
go,
yes.
right? So a lot of those things will apply, of course.
Right.
So my first question is, do you ever do it with a metronome?
I've played it with the metronome, but we practiced separately because I have the second
Right,
part
to keep you
of
like
the phrase there.
So I would,
But counting is a nightmare.
okay, so I want to talk about that. Actually, it shouldn't be that difficult. We'll talk about ways to approach that, so it won't seem difficult. So, but I would recommend using the metronome together, not always, but to check where you are, and you will find that if you really keep your ear on the metronome, that you're coming in, noticing it really. Now, it's easy to do in a piece like this because there's a lot of space. So it's required that you count, otherwise you're kind of lost at sea with the rhythm. So what you need to do when the metronome's off is to internalize a pulse. And of course you have to both have the same internalize. So you have to, a metronome is not there to keep you in time, it's there to align your perception of your internal pulse with what reality is, what the piece needs. Like it's not that you follow a metronome, rather a metronome helps you align your pulse. So and then when you turn it off, you've got it. So this piece you have to, whatever your tempo is, this is, everything has to weigh in this. Now, pulse of course can stretch, compress, but in general at first we need to know where it is before we play with it. So guitarists are notorious for not waiting.
Right.
Like if you get 20 guitarists in a room and have them play a phrase, 19 of them will rush. Just it's the way it is. Because we have nothing to fill the time, right? If you have a violinist, the bow is moving and that gives them a sense of the passage of time. If you have a horn, you're pushing air. I mean, if they're resting, like waiting for their entrance, it's a different thing, that's what you're counting. But in terms of playing a melody, usually you're engaged. Piano is different. They have it, but they seem to be better at it. I don't know why. But guitarists won't come in early. We just all. So unless we adopt a pulse. And part of the problem is that you're playing together, which is great. Often we're very solitary creatures. We play by ourselves, so there's nothing to keep us in time. We're not playing with another instrument.
Very true.
So,
Besides playing together, we've done a lot of work with ensembles recently, other guitar ensembles. It does teach you that.
it teaches you that
Because
real
if
quick.
you have a rest when you're playing, it's a sort of thumb to the
Oh, yeah.
doctor.
Yeah, that's
It comes right out.
So to fix this, we need to have this pulse going on, and we need to know where our part is. It's like, for who is who? So I know. Scott. Scott here.
Paul.
Okay, all right. So Paul, you have a lot of weighting to do. In the fourth measure, one, dee da dee, 2, 3, da dee da. So you're coming on the end of 3. Dee. So what's important to know is where 3 is.
Right.
So when I have, especially coming on the end of a beat, I really put my attention on it. But there's nothing happening there, but that in my mind is in a rival. This kind of thing. So, yeah, so let's just start again. And I want to imagine, there's no good, see, many of my pieces, I will imagine playing with percussions. I'll have in mind, like, maybe drums, a snare drum with brushes. Doesn't really work with this piece, unfortunately, but we could do it anyway. We had to. I wouldn't want to hear that. I think this piece, but maybe just for our purposes, if we imagine something keeping time, keeping us there. We're forced to play with a very good, like jazz drum, very subtle. We imagine that, and then we'd have no choice but to be in time. We practice with the brushes. Stop it. So let's imagine it. So go ahead and set it up. Scott. So we stay. See, problem solved, right? When you can keep this, it's all there in time. there we have it. So that's all you have to do. And especially in a slow pulse, sometimes if you sort of forget to like be thinking about the pulse, or it's not that we think about it, we feel the pulse. It's almost physical. That's the thing. It has to be internalized, and that means it's not just an intellectual 1, 2, 3, because that can float really quick. But a physical feeling of pulse is like walking. You know, when we walk, that is an internalized pulse in terms of time. We're kind of going flat ground and we're walking at a steady rate. That's a good analog to what happens in music when we feel a pulse. So it's almost, you have to find a physical analog to walking. And this is kind of a walking speed. And sometimes then, if you're afraid because we're still and we're trying to feel that, sometimes we subdivide. I do this in my mind. In the 60s. Becomes this thing, but then the pulse. It's very easy to keep consistent in each. So you can play with this idea, but already, because we just talked about pulse and felt pulse, we're completely in time. So that's all you have to do is just get, approach it that way. And then when you feel really comfortable, then it can expand a bit here, especially at the ends of phrases. You can be a little more generosity. So, all right, so that's all we have to do there, really. Is there anything we need to talk about in the first section? I think it sounded really nice.
Did you have any?
Well, I did just a couple of things. One is that we play it quite a lot slower.
That's okay.
You've marked.
Yeah, I hate putting tempo markings. Because,
Someone asked us about that, so I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yeah.
We also wanted to let you know that we've had a unique way of rehearsing this since
Okay.
we live distant from each other. That we've been using this thing called PreSonus. It's a box, and then this software called FarPlay. And there's very little latency.
I've heard about
He can
this.
be where he is, and I can be where I am, and we can rehearse 2 or 3 times a week.
And it actually works pretty well.
It works
It
really well.
does. It
Yeah.
does. So,
Yeah.
though we met a lot and together and playing, particularly in the winter, we use that a lot. So we just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I've heard of it, and as bandwidth increases, I figured they would begin to solve this problem.
Yes.
I didn't mean to digress, but
Yeah.
No, that's
But I do
interesting.
have another question for you.
Yeah.
Right. So when I first started playing this, I played everything with breaststroke. And then Scott and I met with Scott's teacher, and he suggested that I play. He suggested that I play everything freestroke, and I just wondered, and he play it saltasto. So I just wondered. I don't think you play it that way. I just wondered.
Well,
What do you thought about the sound difference?
I don't remember how I play it. I choose, just case by case, and I don't always do things the same either. What I do rest stroke now, I may not tomorrow, but to a large degree. So it depends on what you think of rest stroke, because again, like I mentioned, guitarists do the thing less arpeggio, and then we're done. We don't really think. There's this kind of dichotomy between free stroke and rest stroke, where people give them extremely different. Like a rest stroke is this, and a free stroke is this. Well, not really. There's a lot of middle ground. So the first thing is, a lot of people associate rest stroke with volume, right?
Yes.
True, you can get more volume with rest stroke. On the other hand, it's delightful when it's soft. It gives a different quality.
Right.
See, that's a free stroke. Do a little more hammer and rest stroke. So rest stroke typically has one of the defining qualities. Where rest stroke is really that it excites more of the fundamental of the frequency of that string by the nature of the stroke, because you're going down into the top. It's making a more efficient transfer of vibration of the energy of the string because of the way the string will vibrate consequently from that stroke, which gives you a much greater amplitude in the fundamental. When you do a free stroke, the nature of that stroke excites more energy in the harmonic series a little higher above, making it sound typically brighter, which we can of course compensate for. You can do a bright rest stroke and a warm free stroke. But in general, this is what happens. So it's most noticeable in bass notes. So if you do a bass note, like you hear a lot of guitarists playing this kind of this free stroke. I'm kind of making it sound bad on purpose because I have my nail shaped where I really can't get that sound because I don't want that sound. Because you hear all these really thin bass notes. That's because I'm doing a free stroke at a certain angle that's very common that brings out mainly the mid-range harmonic series. Like we're talking not the fundamental much at all. You know the harmonic series I'm talking about, right? The octave, the fifth, the octave, the third, the fifth. So it starts to put that energy up there and you can hear it. It's like really kind of dry and thin. Hear the difference?
Yeah.
I'm not playing that any louder. I'm doing a rest stroke, but it's just suddenly lower amplitude is much, it's like that. So that's what a rest stroke can do. So that's what I meant. If you think, depends on how you think about rest stroke.
Right.
If you think about it not in terms of volume, but in tonal quality, then then it becomes a different thing, right? So, but you can kind of blend them. You can play a free stroke as if it was a rest stroke, by the way you approach it.
Right.
You can play a rest stroke quiet and change the tone parameters. So this is. I'm always trying to think about it. Don't think about anything as if it's only one thing. Think about what it actually is and can do. So, should you do a rest stroke? If you want to.
Right.
But you got to just approach it that way. You just have to approach it what it will give you. It'll give you a warmer tone if you want it. It can also give you a bunch of noise, like sometimes we make noise with the nails.
Yeah.
So we don't want that.
Yeah.
So I was noticing that we were doing a lot of stuff free stroke, and I was thinking that would benefit from a nice rest stroke. There were many places.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the tone, everything was good. Tones are nice, but you always have that option to bring out a little more deepness in tone.
Yeah.
Judicious use of rest.
Yeah, I mean, there does seem a few parts in it where it's naturally sort of, I don't know what the word would be, but it seems to move forward.
Well, yeah, and you can help that along.
Right.
But especially in the bass notes. A rest stroke bass, I do probably the vast majority of my bass notes the thumb or rest stroke. Pretty much, yeah.
Because these
often as I can.
other suggestion at the time we went through this with Adam was on the first part to play it with the flat.
I use flesh probably almost half.
Flesh, as opposed to, I was doing it with the nail, and he said that was too much.
Well, so yes, there's flesh rest stroke and flush root stroke, and there's nail rest stroke and flush root stroke. There are all these things, but I use flesh a lot too because it's very warm.
That's
And because the pad of the flesh is big, it'll bring out more fundamental. So, and much less of the higher frequencies, so you do this like another instrument, bass. So you can kind of get that illusion. It's very powerful. Yeah. So, all that. Why don't we start where the melody comes in, like pick up the 9. Remember when that falls, maybe set it up first.
Are you playing?
Do I play 8? Just the beginning of 8?
Sure.
So, okay. So,
That's right. Just try to remember that.
A little early, so it's relaxed.
I've had a relaxed day of my life. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
That's sorry.
Do it again.
Yeah.
Nice. Get this section here, the B section, if you will,
Right.
nice. That, hearing it played together sounds really good what you're doing.
Yes, but it was the pulse that you suggested. We were, because we have, you mentioned a metronome, but we also, when we were first trying to learn this, we literally were going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and,
Yeah, sure, it's
very
very
slow.
yeah.
So, well, you know.
But that section does trip us up.
It does,
That-
it does. I mean, I heard it was better.
Yeah, it was very well together.
Yeah. Well, I think also there's a written bar 24, and sometimes I jump the gun a little bit there.
For the and of two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you look at you have the score, obviously. It's, so you just have to see that Scott has 1 and 2 and you have. It's very helpful kind of to think of that, like where it fits in the overall.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if he does it right, then you have 1,
Yeah.
2, 3. You just wait for that and after he does the last chord.
Right.
But that actually worked real well. So I was trying to think. So you could be Scott a little warmer. You're doing it right. You're Scott, right?
I'm Scott.
Yeah, Scott. That's Paul. Yeah, I just want to make sure I had the names right.
Dennis, you know I'm Scott, right?
Yeah. Can I see your driver's license? So, you know, you could be maybe a little warmer there. You're sound just a little bit somehow, starting 25 when you have those lines.
Did it sound a little tinny?
Just maybe a little.
Okay.
Nothing terrible or anything. Just I would maybe I don't know. Let me hear just you play that. Or together. How about that? Can you pick up to 25? So Paul, you're just coming right on it.
Yeah.
So I'll give you 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That sounds good. Okay, so actually, the tone is all right, but you know, because that's your moment there. You have kind of the, you know, the activity. So it's switched. Until now, Paul has had the melody. Now you've got this thing to support. So you got to bring it out a little bit. Your volume's great. I wouldn't do less. I think you need to ride up on top of that a little bit. That will help a whole lot. And you did well. I think 29, 30, and all that, the back and forth works pretty well. That's critical to keep the time.
Yes.
And that was
Very much.
And I was waiting to see at 31 what was going to happen. Because you have to all come together, right? To fit it together. But
That is a possibility for a train wreck. I
Well,
didn't realize that.
yeah. I try to count your bit. I try to count the whole thing. So.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you
But
have-
do we sound as if we're blending?
Actually blending quite nicely. I
Yeah.
think tonally you sound good together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it serves the piece well. This piece is, yeah, it's very easy to make a mess of a piece that's so transparent. You know what I mean? There's so many things that can go
Yeah,
wrong.
tell us
And everybody can hear it.
Yeah.
Sometimes in more complex pieces or faster pieces, you can kind of almost get away with more.
Yeah.
Not in a
Because it's
piece
just
like
a
this.
piece like this, like it's just, you make like a clam, like it's just gonna be there for a long time, you know,
Yeah.
until the next note comes, which can seem like an eternity.
Like my harmonics.
Yeah.
That I missed out.
Yeah, I know, some of those right hand words are tricky to get.
It's tricky.
sometimes. Yeah, like especially at 20.
I can do it at home.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
any consolation.
Yeah, a note about that, so, you know, at 28, when you have that, I tend to move my right hand in preparation, so when it's time for the harmonic, I'm on top of
Right.
it. Instead of this thing, oh,
Yeah.
right?
I found that I have to look. I can't. Yeah, I
The
have-
looking's okay, but let me see you just do that. You have 3 notes that are harmonic.
So,
Three.
so-
So that's what I'm talking about. You're still, and then you have to jump. So actually, so try this. So if you pluck, you move the right hand a little bit. You pluck, you move the right hand a little bit. So no, do this. Like freeze time. So you pluck the thumb and then wait a little bit until you do the. So go ahead and pluck the thumb and now slide a little bit to the right. Now pluck the next note, slide a little bit to the right, and then you're already right there. So I do it. You kind of because. What your hand has learned is to be still,
Right.
and then to jump. So there's no way you'll change that unless you stop time and actually practice moving the hands. It's like another technique. You know? So you're building in that shift among 3 notes instead of all
My
at
son
once.
was, yeah.
Yeah. So this is really helpful. So I try to use that all the time. It's like, yeah, if you want to just go, that's just, it's just like very hard because,
Yeah.
but if you, just, and we're talking not much, if you're starting here, see, it's just a very, see how I'm moving the whole time?
Yeah.
So you can just practice like that. But you have to practice it and move, or your hand will never do it.
Yeah.
Because it's not something you've done before.
No.
We don't typically play that way. We're just like moving as we play. But it becomes second nature.
Yeah.
And people complain to me all the time about my harmonics. Why do you put so many of those in there? They mess me up. I understand. So you got this is the answer though. You just have to practice this kind of technique.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I mean, I was messing around because while I was doing it, I was thinking, well, where is my hand? My hand's in the wrong position.
So just, you spend 5 minutes doing that.
Yeah.
And you like in a few days you'll do it until,
Yeah.
until the habit becomes. You realize, well, that's not hard to do.
Right.
You just have to teach your hand to do it, and you have to actually just do it really slow and practicing each move just until it's just a seamless move.
Right.
And then suddenly the harmonics there, like instead of 20% of the time, it's there 90% of the
Yeah,
time.
or
And
5%.
yeah, that's what happened. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
So, so anytime you have one like this, involves that kind of work, probably fix it just, I don't know if you have.
Isolate it.
Well, isolate what's happening before it, so you incorporate the movement of the right hand, so when it's time for it, right? And it also tends to make the tone a little moving toward tosca because you're moving to the left,
Right.
which then blends beautifully with the harmonic. Kind of, it's a win-win,
Yeah.
right? So,
That was wonderful. Thank you very much.
yeah. Well, we're not done yet.
I'm sorry.
So, well, I don't think we are. Let's see.
Catherine thinks we are.
Yeah. Well, she's at 5 minutes now.
Okay.
So, I wanted to look at the end.
Right.
So we can start at 43 or wherever you like. If that's a good place.
We started at 42.
Sure. Well, why not 41 to just the beginning of the phrase? You can do that because it's right on the one chord. Okay, let me stop you 2 things. So, Scott, 2 things on your part. So at 41, we have the E on the end of the line, right? Right, and then the next measure, we have the D sharp. So that's the only thing changing, right, in your chord. So we need to hear that. We need to make sure you hear the E clearly on the end of that E up there. And then with the next measure. Now I know I have the crescendo beginning just after that for you. And I would, if I were you, I'd already be just getting a little more insistence, and especially so you can hear that D sharp. That's the only thing changing. Otherwise, it's a static. That major 7 becomes very important. So make sure you send it out there a little clearer, right?
Yeah, in fact, I shouldn't be moving the D sharp there. I think I should.
Well, that doesn't matter so much. It's sustained so long. Probably it's mostly gone anyway. Probably it's likely. What is most important is you have the D sharp. So that's all. I couldn't even hear that E. So that's so quiet. Yeah. There, see, that wasn't there. You got to give us a little more volume to that D sharp. Yeah. Just prepare for it. Yeah, exactly. So listen for it, and just so you might have to get used to it. Sometimes we're not plucking as hard as we think, or it doesn't, doesn't behave the way we want. But when you intend that extra volume, it'll begin to happen. But you got to do it many times. And then Paul, in the next measure. So you have it in 43,
Right.
and every time you have this too, what Paul has in 43, you've had also when you have the second beat, the B, open B, and the C sharp. So one of the problems with those kind of chords is that, as I mentioned before in the first lesson, the open string will be louder. So what you need to do is give more energy to the fretted note on the third string. So you want to hear that note even a little more,
Right.
but right now we're hearing it less. The second string is taking over. But the C sharp is the more important note there, and in 44 the D sharp is the more important note. The B is just coming along for a ride and filling it out. It's
Right.
important too. So one thing you can do there is, it might seem, if you're not used to doing this, it's like if you think of like, how do I play 2 notes at the same time? one louder. One way you can begin to do that is, I don't know, if you're doing it with I and M, for example. So I's playing the fretted note. So when I'm plucking something like that, I will push I down into the face of the guitar a little bit and not with M. So you have to have the independence to push in with I, and M is just touching the string normally. When I pluck, because I put more pressure inward, there's more energy available to the third string, and then when I pluck, that energy makes that string louder. You see what I mean? Because I'm actually like almost with a bow and arrow, I've got pressure on it. So there's a little, if I did let go, the arrow would go good, but there's still a little energy. Whereas the other one has none. I'm not pushing in. The energy comes only from the pluck on this M finger, just only from the pluck. But because I'm pushing down, I have now the energy of the compressed strings pushed in and the pluck. And you hear that? That C sharp is predominant instead of, see, I don't do anything.
That's quite a skill.
Well, this is like a little next level stuff.
Yeah.
This is what you need to do ultimately, because again, when we have, it's great stuff. So we have a chord. People think I've got a chord, right? Do we? Is that all we have? You know? So you start thinking, well, how do I want to balance those notes? And then you're up against this idea, like, well, okay, if I've got a chord like this, where I've got an open, it doesn't have to have an open string in the middle. I mean, it can be just a regular chord. Right? If I do that, say we have a chord like this, so we can make them all balanced, or I can bring out the third string, I can bring out the second string, I can bring out the first string. You know, these are the things you start to work on.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I want more of that note, less of that, and it's fun.
That is.
It'll drive you nuts,
Yeah.
but it's fun. So, and this is what you got to do there. So then, right? That C sharp ringing.
Yeah.
As opposed to, if you want that, but that's beautiful. It's got a whole lot of that, right?
Yeah.
So these are all choices, They're very much both all.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Yeah.
And again, have fun with it. The whole point of this stuff is to have fun.
Yeah.
But this gives you more possibility for, getting what you want.
Yeah.
Which I think is
Tremendous.
How did you find, we became interested in this piece partly because we saw your recording you did with Alex.
Yes.
And we initially tried to do it that way. I was going to play the steel string part of Martin, but I played the classical guitar so much, I had trouble finding the notes. The steel string. So did you find you had to play more or louder?
Well, Alex and I, we did a lot of concerts together, and Alex is great. He plays more like a classical player. He studied classical, but the way he's one of the only steel string guys. He's not plugging in. It's just with a good mic, so it was easy to play with him. And he's got this great sense of dynamics and tones, like a classical player. I mean, the way he approaches it, he's really got this clarity. He has a similar sensibility to me about bringing out certain voices, just like what I'm talking about. And so we were a good match. Now he was steel and I'm nylon, so of course I don't know if he probably would adjust, because steel is just this monster. It's like so much, not just with volume, but tone. It's got so many high frequencies available because of the steel strings. You can do a lot with that. It's like, when you sit down with a steel string player, you immediately sound very dull. You do. Because it's like, we just don't have much high frequencies. So probably I did adjust the way I played to kind of fit, but it was actually a beautiful, a warmer, and a brighter voice. So we found ways of doing it that actually worked really well.
Yeah.
So you can certainly do that, but
we
I imagine this
early on.
Yeah, no, I imagine this with two nylons. It's going to match better,
Yeah.
90% of the time.
Yeah, well, we're both well familiar.
Yeah. I mean, Alex and I were special case because we've played together so much and we're doing kind of a unique thing over those years. But, all right, gentlemen.
Fantastic.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
very
all
much.
this as well and everything. We're glad we can play for you today. It's a real honor. Thank you.
I have another set here, so.
Okay. Yes.
Is there a pen in the house? I could go and get it.
My wife's got one.
Oh, she has.
I was also wondering if you had gotten this
Oh, you should now.
Okay, all right. I'll go get one.
We're gonna have a small break and then come up to the open mic section. Coffee and juice downstairs and Indian food, scones, everything. Yeah, that's good.